Hello everyone and welcome to His Author's Voice. I am the author Jack Sanger. The story you're about to hear I've called Mutant. Much of writing comes from stimulation through research and reading about samples brought back from asteroids to Earth for examination on the one hand, and advances in knowledge of genes and human biology on the other hand, led me to write this story. I hope you like it. Mutant. Cassandra Worth had finally tracked down the woman she'd been searching for years. Age 33 and becoming a name in astrophysics, it was not before time, she thought. She had hypothesized events in the cosmos which made her community laugh at her at first, but later her ideas had been proven quite correct. It was ironic that she had found and named stellar pinpricks in the heavens, but could not find evidence of her own mother. And in the end, the grail of her search had been the result of pure happenchance. She had been going through the various collections of papers her adoptive mother had left behind upon her death, trunkloads of them, a weekend's work, and not at a very good time. She was part of a team sifting through the bits of rock and dust collected by a scoop rocket that had returned from Hestia, an asteroid, depositing its valuable cargo in its anti-contamination capsule in the Indian Ocean. It was rewarding work. To the team's excitement, organic matter was undoubtedly present. Going through an old diary stuffed with bits and pieces of cuttings, bills and the odd note, she found a leaflet advertising holidays on an uninhabited island called Jacko, bordered by two seas, namely the Banda and the Timor. The advertisement said that the island was uninhabited and sacred to the locals, but that fishermen took tourists there to walk and camp without being troubled in any way. Why she held this leaflet close to her wide eyes was the scribbled note across it in thick black felt tip. Phyllis Silverman, MD, delivered Cassandra here on Wednesday, April 21st, 2001. Her birthday, of course. Her adoptive mother had always sworn she knew nothing of Cassandra's origins, only that she'd been put up for adoption as having no known relatives. She stopped the work on the papers immediately and started checking medical directories for the woman's name. And there it was, Phyllis Silverman, retired clinician from a university trust in the UK with an address in Lincolnshire. She had the phone number in seconds and with feverish fingers tapped it out on her mobile phone. Minutes later, she'd arranged a meeting in London in a restaurant Cassandra frequented for its vegan cuisine and earthy charm. After a brief hug and cagey smiles, they sat down and ordered. Phyllis was vegetarian, so the menu did not faze her. They sipped cranberry and apple juices, and Phyllis began her story. It's extraordinary meeting you, but not unexpected, given the dramatic way I met your mother. It will remain in my mind forever, of course. I checked in my diary what notes I had on her, but there was not so much. You are the facsimile of her, the same red hair and grey-green eyes. As you know, I met her on a fishing boat, heading out to Jacko, just the two of us and a local fisherman. She was a strange woman, wouldn't tell me her name, said it was not important, said I should call her Anne, short for Anonymous. Early 30s, very pregnant with you, a sort of latter-day hippie. We got along famously. We both liked the wilds and the exotic, which is why we're there, of course. She intimated that there was no father on the scene, but expected the birth in about 6 weeks. After a few days on Jacko, she was heading to the UK and some island in Scotland. I didn't write it down, but there was a note that a long-time male friend of hers lived there and had offered her refuge for the first few months of the baby's life. She said she didn't want the money in her life, so I assumed she came from a background of some wealth, but I never discovered much else about her, really. I noted that she kept singing that line from Joni Mitchell's Woodstock as if it was a hymn. You know, we are stardust, we are golden. Well, I suppose it was a favourite of mine too, and she said that she followed the Virgin Star and was on a mission to help humanity take a new path. But what she meant by this, she never said. Anyway, I underlined it several times in the diary. It seemed such an odd expression. She also said that she employed what she called powers from beyond and had experienced many inexplicable and sometimes miraculous events while on her journey. I say this because of what happened on the island. It was truly miraculous in a dark kind of way, that I was there by her side when she needed me, when you needed me. We were sitting down together on the beach, backs against a mound covered in wild rosemary, our feet cooling in the sea. The air was heavy and fragrant. After sharing my picnic with her, I settled back into a doze. The meteorite struck seconds later. What? Meteorite? Cassandra put down her glass and stared incredulously. Yes, indeed. A meteorite. Truly terrible. There was a sort of whistling and popping noise, very loud, and it must have shattered on a rock in the water nearby, because there was a hissing and bubbling by my feet, and I searched around and found and picked up a fragment. It was still warm. Then I looked round and saw your mother, holding her head. Blood dripped between her fingers. I realized that a minuscule white-hot shard must have struck her. And, well, it turned out, lodged in her brain. I dabbed her with water. You know, in all those moments, she never uttered a sound. She just looked at me with an almost knowing expression, and then she passed out. Minutes later, she died. I did what I was trained to do, a Caesarian section, and pulled you from her. Managed the cord, rubbed your face and mouth with her vaginal fluids, and bundled you into her t-shirt. Cassandra hardly heard the rest of the story recorded in the diary, of how the fisherman insisted on burying her mother on the island to be cared for by its spirits, how Phyllis had to agree because to get the body to the boat and then transport it in the heat for some hours seemed physically beyond them. They marked the grave with a pile of stones, of how Phyllis took her to a hospital on Dilly, how an NGO worker recorded her name and details and said she'd see to the baby's care and contact the British consulate with the full story. No, Cassandra's mind was instead full of the strange conjunction of circumstances that had brought her into life. She knew that the Worths had adopted her despite the obscure nature of her origin. The authorities had not been able to trace her mother. Phyllis had never known her name. As they parted, Phyllis passed her an envelope, a present. Here's a keepsake, if that is not too gooey a term, from that day. I kept it because I somehow knew you'd find me one day." Cassandra opened the envelope, and a tiny fragment of chondrite fell onto her palm. The import of being an astrophysicist and a miracle birth as a result of that rarest of events, death caused by a meteorite strike, played on her mind for months. In many ways it delayed her going for a checkup for the various pains and sicknesses she was intermittently feeling. She'd always been super healthy and had never had to go to a GP before. Luckily, there was a medical facility attached to the labs where she worked. When the doctor told her she was pregnant, she laughed outright. "Impossible! I haven't had sex in 3 years." "Well, it's true, I'm afraid." Doctor sounded dubious about her response. She pushed the inevitable X-ray across the table towards her. "And one further thing. Do you know your blood type?" She was staring at the photo image. I can't remember. I might have been tested when I was very young, I suppose. I don't know. I don't think I've ever known. Maybe I never have been." "Well, yours is very unusual, to put it mildly. You have golden blood." "Huh? What?" This was too much to take in. "You have Rh null. Less than 50 people worldwide have it. No antigens. Very valuable to medical research. Very dangerous for you. Not much chance of a transfusion if you ever need it. So you'll receive a letter explaining your condition and inviting you to give blood regularly. Please do it. Primarily to be stored for yourself and for your baby as insurance." Cassandra left the clinic wildly disorientated. Over the next 6 months she made regular visits, gave blood, received updates on her pregnancy. No one raised with her again the question of the father, so she did not need to defend her absolute certainty that no sperm had entered her. The work on asteroid samples was going quite well, though very slowly. She also had had the little fragment presented to her by Phyllis tested. On it were undoubted fossil traces of bacterial life 3.5 billion years old, a kind of web-like tracery. It preoccupied her. The projectile that killed her mother had travelled like a bullet through an immense stretch of time and space, with that one end to its fated journey. Meanwhile, she researched virgin births. The latest research laid out the possibilities that this could happen. Parthenogenesis could occur if 3 conditions could be found in confluence. It seemed that human genes could be turned on or off. Mutations in genes, which are functionally analogous to genes known to support parthenogenesis in other species, might allow the development of a virgin birth in humans. Cassandra was known for insights in astrophysics, even if she had the reputation of being very left field. Often these had come to her in dreams, tiny congruences of data, which when she woke up led her into new ways of seeing. One morning she woke up to such a fertile dream experience, but it was not about her work. It was about the birth of her child, due now in a matter of weeks. In a dream, she saw Phyllis handling the fragments of meteorite prior to smearing her baby's face with her mother's fluids. The ancient rock glimpses of her work on organic deposits from the asteroids samples, information on genes being switched on and off, and finally the doctor's pronouncement on the rarity of her blood type. All these milled around in her dreaming state. When she woke, something had clicked in her, like a complete resetting of her brain. It was momentous. She made arrangements for a 3-month break for a confinement. And after a struggle with language and technology, she contacted a midwife on Dili, the nearest town to the island of Jaco, and booked her travel there. She would have no trouble finding a fishing boat, she was assured. In those final weeks, as she interrogated data in the stars for her job, and stared through microscopes at atoms and molecules from the asteroid, the child inside her grew. By now, she'd been told it was a female. As she sat in the departure lounge, something made her look on her tablet for the mythological origin of Hestia's name. What she read shook her rigid. Hestia is the Virgin Mother among the gods. So there we are. That was Mutant. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that the ending caught you a little unawares. If you want to hear more short stories or my ruminations on life in general, of course there are more on this podcast site, YouTube, and also on Buzzsprouts. Meanwhile, if you're a reader, there are many novels, short stories, plays to be found on my website, www.jacksanger.com. You can download for free or make a donation. It's entirely up to you. Meanwhile, please click the button and subscribe to this site. And when you are talking to your friends, maybe you'll mention it as well. The more that listen, the merrier, of course. That's all for now. I'll be back soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.